Hello, welcome back to the Road to Rescue here on the Parable of the Vineyard. We're happy to have you here with us. I'm Sean Griffin, and I'm accompanied by my incredible co-host,
Ken Heidebrecht. Good evening, Sean, and good evening, brothers and sisters. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We've got a rather intriguing topic, I would say, this evening, don't we, Sean?
Yeah, it's a fun topic tonight. We're going to be talking about Satan, and we're basically just tracking his journey from creation all the way to his destruction. Because many times we like to talk about the integral parts of things that lead up to the return of the Lord. That's pretty much the premise of this show here on the Road to Rescue. So we're giving you all these component pieces that all blend into the return of the Messiah on the day of the Lord, which is prophesied in hundreds of passages throughout the prophets in Scripture. And one of the components of those is the bad guys. So we got the Nephilim, but we also have got the rebellious angels. And more specifically, one particular rebellious angel we refer to as Satan, right? It seems to be his generic moniker. Isn't that right, Ken?
It is, yes. I think everyone knows who Satan is, right? As you said, he's the antagonist in the story. He's just got that title that people associate being with the devil and like fire, and he's in hell or something like that, right? We know that that's not true, but he's a character, obviously the enemy in the book, and he's one that I've tried to put my finger on for several years. And what we're going to be talking about tonight, I think, is going to be rather eye-opening, Sean, because we get specific names and attributes as well as things that he took part in that I think was removed purposefully out of the canon, of our Western traditional canon, just to keep us not understanding, what the history of our enemy is all about. And so, the whole saying that if you want to really win a war, you got to really know your enemy and study your enemy. I think this is one of those things that the enemy doesn't want us knowing about.
Absolutely right, man. To me, it's no coincidence that most modern American believers have a misunderstanding of hell itself, which is, guys, if you haven't seen the Red Rescue, if this is your first time to watch us here on Parable of the Vineyard on Sunday nights, we've done 12 episodes previously, and one of those episodes we focused specifically and solely on hell, which is the generic English translation of a word from the Hebrew called Sheol. And that is actually, I think it was episode 4 or 5. It's the title of it is called Hell Matters. So you can go in the playlist here in Parable of the Vineyard and you can look up that previous episode. The title of it is Hell Matters. And we break down that misunderstanding that it's been carried over from Catholicism about the underworld, about where you go after you die and what goes on. And specifically this concept of Sheol, which generically is just referred to as hell sometimes in the New Testament translations. So one of those misconceptions, Ken, is this idea of Satan, that he's just like this, the pitchfork emperor of hell, right? Like he's just down there and amidst the flames and just being all Satan-y, right? And that's where actually the scriptures tell us something very, very different. Now the scriptures do not speak well of this character, Satan. I mean, he is called the enemy, the deceiver, the accuser of the brethren. He's explained to be very, very much destined for perdition, which means destruction. And so we're actually going to go through that tonight in the scriptures from start to finish. And what Ken was referring to is something as far as his backstory being removed. And when I say the word from start to finish, I don't mean from Genesis. I mean from the book of Enoch. From the earliest record of a prophet we have receiving a message from God about the storyline leading up to the return of the Messiah, it was Enoch, as far as I can tell. And he gets an in-depth, great explanation of not just who the enemy is, including this guy named Satan, but also he gives us all these wonderful prophecies about the Messiah's return and what he's going to do to this Satan character and his armies when he returns. So I'm excited to get into it, brother. I think it's going to be a great episode.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a beneficial one for sure. One that our enemy does not want us to talk about. So we're going to talk about it, and we're going to pray that, nothing happens. We won't get any trolls. My URL is removed, Sean. So when I screen share, there won't be anyone popping up randomly chanting anything stupid.
Outstanding. Thank you. Okay, brother. Yeah. Do you want to hit the first verse and read that one for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to screen share here.
Okay.
All right. So we've titled this The Road to Rescue, episode 13, Satan's Journey to Destruction. So here in Revelation 20, verses 1 to 10, it says, "Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, holding the key of the abyss and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold of the dragon, the serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. And he threw him into the abyss, and shut it, and sealed it over him, so that he would not deceive the nations any longer until the 1,000 years were completed. After these things, he must be released for a short time. Then I saw thrones, and they sat on them, and judgment was given to them. And I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded because of their testimony of Jesus, and because of the word of God, and those who had not worshipped the beast or his image, and had not received the mark on their forehead and on their hand. And they came to life, and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. The rest of the dead did not come to life until the 1,000 years were completed. This is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy is the one who has a part in the first resurrection. Over these, the second death has no power, but they will be priests of God and of Christ, and will reign with him for 1,000 years. When the 1,000 years are completed, Satan will be released from his prison, and will come out to deceive the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together for the war. The number of them is like the sand of the seashore. And they came up on the broad plain of the earth, and surrounded the camp of the saints and the beloved city, and fire came down from heaven and devoured them. And the devil who deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet also are. And they will be tormented day and night forever and ever." We have quite a bit happening here, Sean.
Yeah, this is. I hope that the viewer paid special attention to verses 3 and verses 7 in that passage, because it specifically gives us a time frame. Now, of the 1,000 years that Satan is locked away at the return of Christ.
That's
And
right.
I've heard so many people try to buck against that idea, and they think that, especially preterism, right? They think somehow that 1,000 years has already passed, that it happened in AD 70, and that and I'm just like, man, guys, it shows a vast misunderstanding of this concept of the gospel, the kingdom of God, and all the descriptions of what's going to happen when the Messiah actually returns. And so this concept here is that we have this character who's called the serpent of old, the devil and Satan. He's bound for 1,000 years, and after the 1,000 years, he's let out for a short time, and then some other things happen. So this is it. It gives us within this 10 verses. It gives us two specific mentions that he's bound for 1,000 years. So
That's right.
that's where, this is just, we wanted to read this verse first because it's a great introduction. We wanted to start it just so people aren't confused. We wanted to start out this whole episode by first showing us the demise and the future destruction of Satan. So at the return of the Lord, he's bound by the angels, thrown into a pit. He's let out after 1,000 years, only to be defeated again and thrown in the lake of fire and extinguished from existence. So
Exactly.
everything we're about to explain with the verses, as we now go back in time and we look at the beginnings of this journey to get to this point from Azazel, what the scriptures tell us about this character. And we're going to look and we're going to see that none of this in any way speaks well of this guy. Okay.
Absolutely.
So this is, we just wanted to show you guys right off the bat his prophesied destruction.
Exactly. And for those of you who may be new to this channel, or even just this show here on Road to Rescue, the whole premise of what we're doing here is showing exactly what the day of the Lord is like from many different angles, as there's several constituent elements to that specific day. And so in the fashion of the show Lost, we're starting with kind of, this day of the Lord here, when he gets chained up, he gets grabbed by angels in verse 1, as it says here. We're actually going to read about those angels and the whole discussion in minutes ahead here. But then we're going to go back and flash back and then go forward and back. So just stay with us. It's going to be good.
That's a great analogy, brother. I forgot that Lost was one of your favorite shows.
I love that show.
Yeah, so this is we're definitely about to do a flashback to the beginning, okay, guys? So we're gonna get some character development for this bad guy named Satan. And here we're looking at, I'll go to the next slide if you'd like.
Absolutely.
All right, so here in the next one, we're looking in 1 Enoch chapter 8, verse 1. And this is an introduction to a specific angel named Azazel in the book of Enoch. And it says, Azazel taught men to make swords and knives, shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them. and bracelets and ornaments, and the use of antimony, and the beautifying of the eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones, and all coloring tinctures.
Yes, pretty much the worst things possible that can be taught to men. If you think about it, I know we expound upon the the implications around what's being discussed here on Honor of Kings, another show that Sean and I actually host over on his channel, Kingdom in Context. But I mean, here we have this angel named Azazel teaching men how to make, weapons of war, essentially, and also how to, for women to make themselves look a little, more presentable, I guess, around the males, and
a little more enticing.
Exactly.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, because that, it looks like he's teaching them makeup in general, right? Beautifying the eyelids, also wearing certain types of costly stones for dressing themselves up, if you will. You know what I mean?
Yeah, get a little glitter on. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, leads, in other passages in Enoch and everything, it tells us specifically it led to fornication.
That's right. It even got his angelic brethren looking at the women.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So here's the thing that we want I'm going to take off the highlighted presenter area for you. But here's the thing that we just want the viewer to know is that we're not coming at this from a chauvinistic standpoint. We're just reading what this is explaining here. To the men, it seems like Azazel taught them stuff that appealed to their carnal nature and their testosterone-based carnal nature. So the women, he taught them things that would appeal to their vanities, which also got them more affection from the men, right? The testosterone charged men, right? So he's teaching men war, and the bravado that goes with that. He's teaching women enticements and all the games that go with that. You know what I mean? So it's like he's pitting men against women, in my opinion. I mean, this is a little bit of conjecture, I admit that, but the way that I observe life in general and the relationship between men and women and what they struggle with, and how modern day demonic doctrines, political doctrines, try to pit men against women, I would see this as being the beginning of that. As Azazel is also creating these what's a good word? These tropes, these stereotypes, right?
Yeah.
The women have to be dolled up and the men have to be grunts. You know what I'm saying? They've got to be alpha males, and the women, they got to look like dolls, dolled up, and we see that same dichotomy in society today that people rage against. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely, man. And it's fascinating. Even just if we wanted to talk about the makeup world in general, just some of the stuff that's used to beautify, some of these products themselves, that where they come from, it's just interesting in of itself. But
that's true.
Just not healthy. It's not healthy in all respects. And I'm not saying that people who wear makeup, I'm not going there with that.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to address, is that we're not approaching this from like a chauvinistic standpoint. If a woman wants to wear makeup and beautify her eyelids or whatever, that's her choice, right? But it's like I said, there's a little bit further explanation. We're just not getting to that right now about how Azazel that turned into actual enticement and fornication. It wasn't just because a woman wanted to feel pretty. So he had a plan, he had a strategy for getting people to think like that. Just like in today, you want to convince young men that warfare is cool. Well, this is why we have all these video games that are constantly about warfare. So to me, I don't think it's any coincidence that when the Messiah returns, what is his promise to us? That men will stop learning war.
Exactly. And we see the reversal, right? We see men taking their swords and bending them into plowshares, right? So we're seeing the complete reversal of this idea here.
That's right. So this is, do you want to hit the next passage? We're just getting more introduction of this Azazel character, but now, as many of people already know, these rebellious angels in the days of Noah, in the days of Enoch, from Jared to Enoch up to Noah, these rebellious angels, they actually came and they descended from heaven. They took wives of whom they chose. They created their own offspring. We're going to go over that just barely, but this focus of this show isn't about the offspring, which are called the Nephilim. It's about their progenitors, their fathers, which is the rebellious angels. And so at one point, these rebellious angels got punished, or the father had to address their behavior. And that's what we're about to read in this next slide.
Yeah. Okay. So here we have Azazel's sentencing announcement in First Enoch chapter 10, 1-8. It says, "Then said the Most High, the Holy and Great One, spake, and sent Uriel to the son of Lamech, and said to him, Go to Noah, and tell him in my name, hide thyself, and reveal to him the end that is approaching, that the whole earth will be destroyed, and a deluge is about to come upon the whole earth, and will destroy all that is on it. And now instruct him that he may escape, and his seed may be preserved for all the generations of the world." And again the Lord said to Raphael, "Bind Azazel hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness, and make an opening in the desert, which is in Dudael, and cast him therein. And place upon him rough and jagged rocks, and cover him with darkness, and let him abide there forever, and cover his face, that he may not see light. And on the day of the great judgment he shall be cast into the fire. And heal the earth, which angels have corrupted, and proclaim the healing of the earth, that they may heal the plague, and that all the children of men may not perish through all the secret things that the watchers have disclosed and have taught their sons. And the whole earth has been corrupted through the works that were taught by Azazel. To him ascribe all sin." Wow.
Yeah, man, there's so much here. I mean, it's just this concept of so we've got Azazel in verse 3 and 4. They're saying, look, this is this is basically the sentencing. That's why I actually titled the subheading like I did, because we're going to read later about the actual moment of this sentencing happening. In fact, Ken, as you already know, I would posit that the opening verse we read tonight in our introduction, Revelation 20, verses 1-3, is the sentencing of this that was declared back before the flood.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. And I know the first couple times that I read Enoch, I came across this verse, and the way it seems as you read it, the tense appears to be an immediate sentencing for this specific angel. But the context, if you could continue reading the book, as well as in parallel passages like, Revelation, as we start to see that this character is potentially the one that we're talking about in Revelation, it can't be an immediate sentencing here. It has to be, the time qualifier doesn't allow for that if we're going to go along this track of mine that this character is potentially Satan.
That's right. Yeah. So the Father makes a proclamation specifically to this angel Azazel here in verses 1-9. Now, for the sake of time, unfortunately, we didn't have the opportunity to read the rest of Enoch 10. So this is why we're doing our best to make this as concise as possible for the viewer. If you want to go and finish reading the rest of Enoch 10 on your own, we highly encourage you to do that, because what you'll see is the rest of the angels that rebelled with him, and there was up to 200 of them total. The rest of the angels, they all received an immediate judgment. Whereas Azazel, all sin is ascribed to him. That's a big thing to remember. And it even says in here that he's going to be. It tells us the description of what his judgment is going to be. But as we see later, this guy's still interacting much, much later. And then at the end of Enoch, which we're going to read a little bit later, it actually ties his judgment that we read here in Enoch 10 directly to the return of the Messiah. So this is why we just want we're going over these to begin with, because we want to help you guys understand from the get-go that there is the way that Enoch speaks is very much like Genesis and Revelation. It's not always chronological. Sometimes it can speak and then back up and explain itself later. It's notorious for that, actually. So that's why it'll make a statement, and then like 3 chapters later it explains that statement in great detail. But if you don't keep reading, you don't get the explanation. So this is the problem with people not reading the entire book and just reading certain snippets and then try to create doctrine off of it. So this is why we don't get an introduction to Satan in Genesis, do we, Ken?
No, we really don't, Sean. We don't. And it's frustrating for those who are stubbornly adhered to the concept that what we have in our canon of 66 is it, and anything outside of that is, you're almost blasphemously a heretic for looking at anything outside of it, even though the scriptures of the 66 mention a lot of this stuff and refer to other books. So yeah, it's definitely, in my opinion, a wise thing as a Berean, which we all should be, to look outside to external works that at least are referred to in what we consider the canon of 66. And
here's the ironic. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm bad, dude. I thought you were done.
Oh no, go ahead. I
was just saying the ironic part was that Enoch used to be in the canon.
Yeah, exactly.
So if this were,
140 years ago,
Yeah, if this were the year 1830, we wouldn't even be having to explain that to people. They would just
Yeah.
already know, oh, this is scripture, and they would just be trying to figure out what it's saying
Yeah.
instead of
Sean,
having this conversation in their head: is it legitimate or not?
yeah, I know it's frustrating. Verse 5 here, Sean, where it says that, and let him abide there forever. So once again, we don't have access like we do to the other books of scripture, whereas we can kind of pull up, the ancient letters and the words and see exactly what kind of words are being used here. But a lot of times when the translators put in the word forever, it doesn't necessarily mean literally forever. It's an like extended duration of time. And
Yeah.
so for verse 5 here, this is exactly what it would be. And we get exactly how long that is in Revelation, for 1,000 years. So the word forever here is a long duration of time. It's a specific time that's of 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it comes from the Hebrew word olam, and that word olam, it speaks about things for long durations of time, things in antiquity, or even things, forever. But it depends on the context. This is why, as always, Kingdom and Content, my whole show, the whole channel that I do, it's based off this concept that we try to look at the context of these passages so that we're not confused. And the context of the rest of the book of Enoch tells us that not only is this not an immediate judgment, so this is just the proclamation of what's going to happen to him, all right, but it doesn't happen immediately to him. In addition to that, we also see that this concept of forever, this word olam, would fall into one of the definitions of that word, being that it's just a long duration of time, which is exactly what we read in Revelation 20, verse 1 through 3, which is 1,000 years. That's a long period of time.
Exactly.
And even when he gets out, I don't know how long he's going to be out, but he gets thrown in the lake of fire after he gets out.
Yeah, I was just going to say in verse 6 here, it says, on the day of the great judgment, he shall be cast into the fire, which, corresponds to what Revelation 20 says about him being cast into the lake of fire with, where the beast and false prophet already are. So
and that's why I love that we have, the book of Revelation as well as a parallel, because it lets us know there is 1,000-year time period between verses 5 and 6.
Yeah, exactly.
And so this would be one where, and I've, if in case you guys, the viewer is not aware, Ken and I, we do another show called Honor of Kings. It's actually on my channel, Kingdom in Context. We're very blessed and thankful that Adam from here at Parable of Vineyard has asked us to be on his channel one night a week and do this Road to Rescue show. But here at Kingdom in Context, we do a show on Saturday nights called Honor of Kings. And the first 12 or 13 episodes, Ken, we just solely broke down Enoch.
Yeah,
that's all we did. We just looked line by line through Enoch. I think we went through like the first 50 chapters or more, and that's all we did was looking at Enoch. And we've got several episodes that deal with this concept and flesh it out in great detail. So if you guys want more than what we're presenting tonight, you're welcome to go check that out.
It definitely makes better sense, in my opinion, of Genesis 6, the enigmatic first few verses of Genesis 6.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that we realized as we were studying for weeks, line by line, this book of Enoch on camera, so everyone could watch us do it, we realized that not only does the book of Enoch summarize things and put out statements that it later backs up and explains later, but it is, this is the prequel to the book of Revelation. Like there are so many ties to the book of Enoch and the book of Revelation. If you understand the book of Enoch, reading the book of Revelation becomes very simple, because it's so closely related in content and explanation of heavenly things and angels' behavior and what's going on here and there. So just something to consider for the viewer.
Yeah, I agree, Sean. And it's funny when you hear, Christians who, bless their heart, they have a good heart and they mean quite well. I know they do. But when they say, like, when you ask them, what's your favorite book of the Bible? Oh, I love Revelation. Love it. It's my favorite book. It's so cool. It's so crazy. Oh, okay, cool. Like, how well do you think you know the first 2/3 of the Bible? Well, that's the Old Testament. You don't really need to know it that much. It's like, are you kidding me? Yeah. The only way you're going to know your favorite book is to comprehend the first 2/3 of your Bible very well. And then I would posit that you even need to know external books like the book of Enoch in order to properly understand this thing too.
Yeah, because there's some like we talked about on one of our shows, Enoch 47 is the explanation and the same story of Revelation 6 verses 7 through 11.
Yeah,
like it's the only explanation of that, because there is no other thing in the canon that shows you what's going on there except for the book of Enoch. And it's just amazing to me. So I think another thing we wanted to talk about real quick with our next slide was just the concept of Azazel. And this guy, what we just read to you were passages before the flood in the book of Enoch. And we talked about the angels being sentenced, and then specifically this angel Azazel is being singled out for a judgment that was not given to the rest of the angels. The rest of the angels, as Jude verse 6 tells us, are locked away in chains of darkness reserved for the day of judgment, right? So they're locked away in a place called Tartarus. Well, whereas Azazel was not given the same judgment, and we see through context and through later applications that this guy's still out. Right. So is it any wonder about what we're about to read here in Leviticus chapter 16 that Azazel is actually the Hebrew word for the scapegoat in the Law of Atonement? So I'll just get to it real quick. Ken, do you want to read this one?
Yep, sure, man.
Okay.
Just screen sharing here. Yeah, Sean, this is an interesting thing when I came across it, where it says, "And the whole earth has been corrupted through the works that were taught by Azazel. To him ascribe all sin." When I was trying to understand who the heck is this Satan character, this adversary that we all know in Christianity as, the main antagonist of the story, this just seemed bizarre for this angel, Azazel, to have all sin ascribed to him. So we're going to read this next passage here in Leviticus 16, 5-10, where, this is kind of applied here. And it says, "He shall take from the congregation of the sons of Israel," this is Aaron, two male goats for a sin offering, and one ram for a burnt offering. Then Aaron shall offer the bull for the sin offering, which is for himself, that he may make atonement for himself and for his household. He shall take the two goats and present them before the Lord at the doorway of the tent of meeting. Aaron shall cast lots for the two goats, one lot for the Lord and the other lot for Azazel. Then Aaron shall offer the goat on which the lot for the Lord fell, and make it a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot for Azazel fell shall be presented alive before the Lord, to make atonement upon it, to send it into the wilderness for Azazel." So, Sean,
wow,
one of the reasons why, and this isn't an endorsement, I personally enjoy this version of the scriptures. One of the reasons why I like the Et Sefer is because it puts the name in where it should in this passage.
That's right.
Many other versions will simply say the scapegoat, and then they'll have kind of a little side note saying it's actually a noun here for a name, Azazel, but they don't want to put that there because that doesn't make sense to these translators, correct?
That's right. Yeah, and this is what we're at the mercy of, actually, translators understanding the context of these ideas.
Exactly.
And if they don't, that's why they'll just make up their own ideas, trying to make sense of it, or they'll insert their theological biases. And this is where we get a lot of Bible translations with Trinitarian leanings built into it. So, yeah. But in this passage here, we've got an amazing little moment where in the sin offering, they're looking at this goat, and they're putting sin on this goat in this metaphor, in this fashion of this ritual. And then he's being sent out into the wilderness, which is very symbolic of what we just read about the pronouncement of the sentencing for this same named rebellious angel named Azazel.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge thing to have everything ascribed to you, right? All sin. And just for the viewers to understand here, for those who don't know what the biblical definition of sin is, it's the transgression of Yahweh's instructions or his law. So that's for all sin, for everyone's ability to transgress the law, all of that is ascribed to this angel because of what he had taught mankind. It's fascinating.
That's right. And then here in his law, in God's law, we have God using Azazel as a symbol for sin being carried away from the camp.
Yeah. And
that's where, the sin is being ascribed to the Azazel goat. And that's just, man, it doesn't get much more symbolic than that, in my opinion. Yeah, and directly correlates to what we read in Enoch about this Azazel rebellious angel. So it's fascinating. Man.
Right on.
But here's some of the things that we wanted to talk about, really, as far as most people, now that we have an introduction of just who this character is, where he came from. So he was created, with all the other angels, right? And so he descended in the days of Jared, as we're told in Genesis 6 and Enoch chapter 6 through 15, and also chapter 69. And then when he descended with these other angels, he seemed to kind of stand out from them, right? He's a little different, and he didn't get the same judgment as they did either, which, as Ken and I theorized, could possibly mean he didn't do the same deeds as the other angels. The other rebellious angels that were chastised for taking wives and having babies with them. And people might be thinking to themselves, Ken, wait, how does that even work, man? They're spiritual beings, right? They're angels. And this is why I'm like, guys, this has to do with our understanding of what spiritual beings actually are, according to Scripture. So I'm actually about to release a video on that, and I think Ken's working on his own version of a video for that too. But we may end up having to do a show on that at some point, just because it seems to be a huge misconception for a lot of believers, is they just don't get the idea of what an actual spiritual being is. They think that they don't have bodies of any kind. You know,
Yeah.
when do we have Jubilees chapter 15 verse 27 tells us at creation the angels were made circumcised. So guess what? They got bodies.
It implies that they're males and they have male members.
Yes, they have bodies, fully functioning bodies, guys. That just because the word angel just means messenger. It doesn't mean they're and yes,
Casper the Friendly Ghost.
They're not Casper ghosts, guys. These are other forms of creation, physical, tangible. They just have more ability than we do because they're made of different physics. They're made of water and spirit and God's light, basically. They're not made of earth as we were, right? And this is actually what Enoch actually explains in chapter 15. It says that the angels corrupted their bodies with the women, but it doesn't say that of Azazel. Right? This is why Azazel seems to be kind of unique in this regard. He's kind of singled out. And as a result of what goes down from the flood, these other angels before the flood are punished and locked away in Tartarus. But after the flood, we see this character called Satan still talking, both in the book of Enoch and in the book of Jubilees. And this is the passage we're going to read real quick from Jubilees, because this is going to help us understand in very specific wording where Satan gets all of his minions, basically, if I could put it like that.
Yeah, exactly. He's definitely still part of the storyline post-flood. So
yeah. So this will be the Jubilees 10. It's verses 1 through 13. And it says, and in the third week of this Jubilee, the unclean demons began to lead astray the children of the sons of Noah, and to make to err and to destroy them. And the sons of Noah came to Noah their father, and they told him concerning the demons which were leading astray, and blinding and slaying his sons' sons. And he prayed before the Lord his God, and said, God of the spirits of all flesh, who has shown mercy unto me, and has saved me and my sons from the waters of the flood, and has not caused me to perish as you did the sons of perdition. For your grace has been great towards me, and great has been your mercy to my soul. Let your grace be lifted up upon my sons, and let not wicked spirits rule over them, lest they should destroy them from the earth. But do you bless me and my sons, that we may increase and multiply and replenish the earth. And you know how your watchers, the father of these spirits, acted in my day. And as for these spirits which are living, imprison them, hold them fast in the place of condemnation. Let them not bring destruction on the sons of your servant, my God. For these are malignant. They're created in order to destroy. And let them not rule over the spirits of the living. For they alone can exercise dominion over them. No, excuse me, for you alone can exercise dominion over them. And let them not have power over the sons of the righteous from henceforth and forevermore. And the Lord our God bade us to bind all. And the chief of the spirits, Mastema, he came and said, Lord Creator, let some of them remain before me, and let them hearken to my voice, and do all that I say unto them. For if some of them are not left to me, I shall not be able to execute the power of my will on the sons of men. For these are for corruption, and leading astray before my judgment. For great is the wickedness of the sons of men. And he said, and this, of course, we're assuming verse 9 is talking about God said back, let the 10th part of them remain before him, and let 9 parts descend in the place of condemnation. And one of us he commanded that we should teach Noah all their medicines, for he knew that they would not walk in uprightness, nor strive in righteousness. And we did, according to all his words. All the malignant evil ones were bound in a place of condemnation, and a 10th part of them we left, that they might not be subject before Satan on the earth. And we explained to Noah all the medicines of their diseases, together with their seductions, how he might heal them with the herbs of the earth. And Noah wrote down all these things in a book as we instructed him concerning every kind of medicine. Thus the evil spirits were precluded from hurting the sons of Noah.
Wow. Yeah, Sean, this chapter and these verses, I mean, there's no ambiguity here that we see exactly what those Nephilim, pre-flood Nephilim giants were, right? What they ended up becoming once they died. Once they, were war against each other, they killed each other off. Then we had the flood. Then we see here on Noah's day, the ark's already landed. His sons are out. They're already, reproducing. And we see these unclean demons. Where the heck did they come from? Where, he understood exactly here. We see that the watchers, the pre-flood watchers, were the ones that essentially were the fathers of these unclean demons that were wreaking havoc upon his family members. And Sean and I have discussed this on our other show, on our Kings, and it's just, in my opinion, if we don't have this chapter and as well as the book of Enoch, we won't understand where demons come from and what they are. And in my opinion, the Father is not going to just leave us without this information, gaps of misunderstanding as it pertains to who the adversary is and what his minions are and how they came about in this earth, because there's been so much speculation because of this missing information. So many, errant doctrines put out and misleading information about what demons are. And it's, in my opinion, Sean, it's straightforward here. Demons are unclean spirits. They're wicked spirits. And they are the roaming spirits of the Nephilim giants that died.
Yeah, brother, in my lifetime, I've asked pastors, where do demons come from? And you just get a blank expression returned to you, and you're just like, bro, seems to be like, that was a question I had as, when I was a teenager, just starting to read the Bible, when I gave my heart to Christ. And I was like, wait a minute, where are these guys coming from? Because, I love to write. And so like I have a proclivity, to look at this concept from a writer's standpoint, right? So when I see characters being introduced, I'm trying to think to myself, where'd that character come from? What happened? Like, where's he introduced earlier, so I can know why he's important to be mentioned and referenced later. So when I see Jesus walking around, interacting with unclean spirits, calling them demons, calling them unclean spirits, and speaking to them, right? That we already know this concept of possession, but we're seeing Jesus interact with them before he exorcises them out of the host body, out of the person. He's speaking to them. These are conscious, sentient beings.
Yeah.
Where did these guys come from? And what's going on here? Right? And why are we being warned against them? Right? If you sweep your house clean and you don't fill it up with God, you get 7 times worse when they come back. So we're getting instructions on how to behave around them, how to deal with them. He gives his authority to his disciples, how to kick them out, how to, but at the same time, where did they come from? If I'm reading through Genesis all the way through Matthew, I don't see any explanation of where these guys even came from.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Like you mentioned wonderfully already, Jubilees and Enoch gives us clear explanation that it was because, and this is, further on in Enoch chapter 15, it's also explained to us as God is reprimanding and explaining what's going to happen to the watchers, is it's basically saying that, they came forth as a mixture between the spiritual angels and mankind, the women of mankind. And so therefore they have to remain on the earth. Or they can't come up, they can't ascend to the heavenly realm, right above the firmament. They have to, because they were born on the earth, basically.
Yeah.
And so they have to stay down here. But as a result, many of them are going to be punished. 9/10 of them, only 1/10 of them was let out to be subject before Satan himself, whom in verse 7 actually was called Mastema. So this is why we introduced this passage here. And I think you actually made another slide in addition to really focus in on this part, didn't you, Ken?
Yeah, I did. And verse 8, where it says that he's the chief of the spirits, Mastema. We have another name.
Yeah, right? If you scroll down, what I meant was if you scroll down to the other slide you made, where it just lets the people see Jubilees chapter 10, verse 8 through 13.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah, that way they can see it a little clearer.
I'll read it real quick.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, brother.
And the chief of the spirits, Mastema, came and said, Lord Creator, let some of them remain before me, and let them hearken to my voice, and do all that I shall say unto them. For if some of them are not left to me, I shall not be able to execute the power of my will on the sons of men. Guys, I'm not going to read it all because I just read it, but this is where we're starting to see different names for Satan, right? This adversary, and Mastema is one of them. And so, Sean, I've heard, people who want to kind of rail against these extra biblical books say, well, this is a contradiction. Look at this guy's name's Mastema. Well, is it Mastema? Is it Azazel? Is it Satan? Which is it? And I would say, well, don't we see other characters in Scripture who have several different names and different titles? Like, how is that contradictory?
Yeah, this is why we're actually using this portion of the show to go over the different names of Satan. So just like we have, other characters in Scripture that have multiple names for them, that's with no explanation, just because I've got 3 names, Mr. Griffin, Sean, or my middle name, right? So it's like these characters in the past, they can also have more than one name, and they're actually referenced as that. I mean, we've got I'm just trying to think of some immediate examples. What was it? John Mark, the apostle Mark,
Yeah.
Or the writer of the book Mark. I think his name was also John. And you've got Peter, right? What was his other name? I'm going blank right now.
Simon.
Yeah, Simon. That's right. So yeah, is he Simon or is he Peter? Is that a contradiction? No, he had both names. Those are his 2 names. Yeah. So we have Azazel actually seems to have a few names, right?
Yeah, I mean, even in the New Testament, we have this other character that we didn't put on the slides for tonight. I can't remember exactly where it is. You probably know, Sean, but it's when Yeshua is casting out demons, and the Pharisees are saying, "Oh, he must have a demon. He's doing this because he has a demon or something like that." And he's talking about Belial or Beliar. That's another name, right? You cast them out in Belial or Beliar, which, in my opinion, my research, is just another name. It's another synonym for Satan, this adversary.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like the Antichrist himself, which we have, tried to show from Scripture, is this guy named Nimrod. He has many names, and he was also called Bel.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, by the way, speaking of Bel, and since we're talking about Satan, isn't it interesting in that book, Bel and the Dragon, the apocryphal book?
Yeah.
That Daniel destroys Baal, the idol of Baal, seemingly with a sword, but then specifically he destroys the dragon idol of the dragon with fire and not with the sword.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating.
I mean, I'm not trying to get on a tangent, but I just thought that was wild because those 2 guys are intimately linked, right? Because they're, we see that in Revelation as well, that Satan gives the Antichrist all of his authority to go out and do things. And so, and this is actually what we're reading right here in Jubilees, is Satan is acknowledging that he has some sort of authority. And he's saying, look, I need a tenth of these guys, of these wicked spirits that proceeded from the dead bodies of the giants. I need them because who else is going to help me do my will upon mankind, right? And to test mankind. So it's like, and the Father allowed it, and that's interesting.
It's very interesting, and it's even more interesting when you start to consider what is 1/10. What is this number exactly? Especially when you want to consider, was it Revelation 9, where the beast comes out of the bottomless pit with 200 million chimeric horsemen?
It's crazy, bro.
200 million. If that's 9/10 potentially, I mean, wow, we got a lot of demons roaming this earth. That makes up that 1/10.
Yeah, that's right. So that would, I mean, if that was the other 9/10, then 1/10 is what, 20 million?
It's enough to wreak crazy havoc. I mean, we already see them doing that to, like I said, like as we're seeing here, to Noah's sons and their sons. And we even see later on in the book of Jubilees, that we're not referencing it tonight, but it talks about how these demons control the thoughts and the thoughts of the heart, which is crazy. So they have a lot of influence.
Yeah, it's oppression, demonic oppression. They definitely can influence a person, which is what Satan is kind of alluding to in this passage, right? He said, because the man's wicked, so I need some people to help me go out and play upon the wickedness that's already in man, to lead them off into, which is the Father uses for our discipleship and our growth, right? So we we have to resist temptation, right? What does James 4:4 say? Resist Satan and he will flee from you. Submit yourself to God. And resist Satan. So this whole concept of submitting yourself to God is walking in the ways of the Father, which is our discipleship process. And as a part of that, the inverse side of that is we're resisting the temptation of the enemy. And this is right. And even his minions, the unclean spirits that go out to do his will. And this is why, in my opinion, this is such an integral part of understanding the position, the role, is that this guy, not only does he have a couple names, but where did he get his workforce, basically, right? Because we know from all of the scriptures we already explained in that episode I mentioned earlier, which is called Hell Matters, that the human, when we die, we go to Sheol to either wait judgment or resurrection. So we're not wandering just up on the earth to be, to show up at and talk to you. Like the people that are at seances saying they're talking to your granny, they're not. They're talking to a demon.
Yeah.
It's not
Because
your
they've been
granny. Your
around.
granny's say what?
Because they've been around since the flood. I mean, these
That's
things
right.
have been able to collect information and to roam the earth freely, and that's the part of their purpose, right? That's part of their job title, is to gather information and trick.
That's right. Which is what we read, in Enoch. They're intended for leading astray, right? And so as we go further, though, we're going to find there's another name for Azazel, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And he's not just another name, but I guess this next passage here in Enoch 54 I wanted to show folks is that we've already acknowledged that this Azazel cat is given a different judgment. He wasn't locked away immediately in the book of Enoch. In the book of Jubilees, after the flood, we got a guy named Mastema, who's also being called Satan, saying that he gets authority over 1/10 of these unclean spirits. But here in the book of Enoch, chapter 54, we've got Satan being directly called Azazel.
Yeah, Sean, I'm just showing on the screen here, verse 11, back in Jubilees 10, where it says, "And we did all according to his words, all the malignant evil ones we bound in the place of condemnation, and 1/10 part of them we left, that they might be subject before Satan on the earth." So we have Satan being correlated with Mastema here in verse 1, who is the chief of the spirits. So once again, guys, Satan, Mastema, Azazel, Satan. We're starting to see some things line up here.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you like, we'll go to Enoch 54 and read through this one real quick.
Sure. I got it pulled up here, Sean.
Oh, thank you, brother.
All right. It says, "And I looked and turned to another part of the earth and saw there a deep valley with burning fire. And they brought the kings and the mighty and began to cast them into this deep valley. And there mine eyes saw how they made these their instruments, iron chains of immeasurable weight. And I asked the angel of peace who went with me, saying, For whom are these chains being prepared? And he said unto me, These are being prepared for the hosts of Azazel, so that they may take them and cast them into the abyss of complete condemnation. And they shall cover their jaws with rough stones, as the Lord of spirits commanded. And Michael and Gabriel and Raphael and Phanuel shall take hold of them on that great day, and cast them on that day into the burning furnace, that the Lord of spirits may take vengeance on them for their unrighteousness in becoming subject to Satan and leading astray those who dwell on the earth."
Okay, man, I love this one. And here, the reason why is because this particular one, brother, not only does it directly line up Azazel with Satan, but it references the hosts, which means the armies of Azazel, which is going to be those, in my opinion, those evil spirits we just saw in Jubilees that were given into his authority, right, to work his will. Because we know that the human armies that gather themselves at the Battle of Armageddon on the day of the Lord, they're not going into the lake of fire that day, right? They're going into Sheol to await judgment if they've rejected the Messiah and then trying to fight him at his return. So their earthly bodies are destroyed in the battle. Their souls go to Sheol to await judgment. Whereas these hosts of Azazel, they're being thrown in the burning furnace, which is the lake of fire. Because, again, as we've already defined from a previous episode, from many, many, many scriptures, Sheol is not a place of burning fire. That's the lake of fire. It's two different concepts.
Yeah, precisely.
So the way this reads to me, Ken, and if you have a different idea, let me know. But the way this verse reads to me is that on the great day of the Lord, which is this moment, this is the context of this moment talking about, these iron chains of immeasurable weight, which is what we just read from the introductory verse from Revelation 20, verses 1 through 3, that Michael takes a great chain and wraps Satan up in this great chain and casts him into the earth. And it says they are taking, and these are being prepared for the hosts of Azazel, and it also talks about the chains themselves, because that's what Enoch is asking about. What's going on with these chains? And that the angels explain to him, well, these chains are specifically for the hosts of Azazel, right?
Yeah.
And then later on down in verse 6, it says, and 4 angels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Phanuel, will take hold of them, which seems to be a plural, on that day, since it just told us these chains were being made for the armies of Azazel. So he's taking hold of them on that great day and cast them in that day into the burning furnace. Now, specifically because they were subject to Satan. Now, the reason why I'm elaborating on this is because in Revelation 20, that's why we started off with Revelation 20, because Revelation 20 is a quick summation, right? Satan himself is locked up, but we don't get any explanation on what's going on with all of his armies.
Exactly.
Here we do. We get this idea that his armies are also locked up, thrown in the lake of fire that day, which is also on that day where we see the beast and the false prophet are thrown in the lake of fire in Revelation 19.
Yeah.
So
lots of entities getting thrown into the lake of fire
yeah,
on that day.
yeah, that's right. So we've got the beast, the false prophet, and all these Nephilim unclean spirits are thrown into the lake of fire, as far as I can tell, on the day, when he returns at the beginning of the 1,000 years. And that's why at the beginning of this show, we read Revelation 7 through 10 out of chapter 20, which tells us after the 1,000 years, Satan is released, but there's no mention of Nephilim spirits anymore. It's just Satan.
That's right, and he's cast in Daduel, the wilderness, right? That's somewhere within the depths of the earth. Whereas he wouldn't be cast into the lake of fire and then taken back out just to be cast back in, right? Once you're cast in that thing, that's it. You're in there.
Yeah, you're extinguished from existence. There's no coming back.
Yeah.
So that's why he's just put in a holding place for 1,000 years.
Yeah,
and Sean, he comes back out by himself.
Yeah, it's crazy to just think about these.
Hey, Ken, I'm sorry to interrupt you real quick, brother. You're still screen sharing.
Yes, I am. I was just going to say, Sean, that the iron chains of immeasurable weight, they must be just something to behold. Like Enoch obviously was shown so much in that book. And for him to be like, what are these things, right? Like, what are these chains? Because we know, like, just the sheer power that some of these angels possess, right? We see Angel Ramael killing 185,000 Assyrians in like a night, right?
Yeah.
So if Azazel has the potential power that one of these angels like Ramael has, think about like the type of chain that this thing has to be to hold this entity. You know what I mean? Like, they got to be just something that we've never seen before.
Yeah, and this is where this could also lend into a whole nother conversation and maybe a different show we do on the Nephilim themselves. But in Revelation 19, it says the kings of the earth, the armies of the earth that came to battle of Armageddon, the beast, the false prophet, the soldiers, and the mighty men are all destroyed at the coming of the Lord. Very possible that we see a return of giants in the end of days.
Yeah, it's definitely looking like our modern times here are definitely trying to reach back into the type of environment that Noah was in before the flood, with all that genetic mystery, for sure.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if we see giants return, because it's the same strategy from the beginning, and they were perfect host bodies as well for these unclean spirits.
Yeah.
So, it's just something to consider. But basically, we're getting this concept of putting these pieces together, and we hope that we're doing well. So you're welcome to put in the comments any questions that you have or whatever. But this concept here is that we're seeing this rebellious angel Azazel introduced. He's kind of singled out because his behavior is a little different from the rest of the rebellious angels. He doesn't get the same punishment. He's left out. That's why we see him in Job 1 and 2 having a conversation with other angels who came before the Lord, right? And God's like, "Where you been?" And then, he's like, "Oh, running to and fro on the earth." And so we see him, as we're about to read in other passages, he's doing stuff still, right? So even though judgment was pronounced, he wasn't technically put in there yet, right? No. But in the moments that he is put in there, we get some of the backstory with Enoch, as well as his armies that are with him and what's going on with him. And even way back in the days before the flood, the Father knew this was going to happen, and he's already preparing the shackles for the armies of Azazel.
Yeah, Azazel's been a hard worker, Sean, definitely. And he's unfortunately going to amp things up when he realizes that his time's short, right? When we have the 42-month reign of Apollyon, and he knows, okay, I think he knows the timeline personally.
Yeah.
But, it's going to be crazy days ahead.
Yeah, that's right. And so this next passage, Ken, here in Enoch 69, I just want to go over this with you because I wanted to address this just in case there are some viewers in the audience that had read Enoch 69, because I know that Adam here on this channel, he has taught and produced many different videos about the book of Enoch. So there may be some viewers to this channel that are familiar with Enoch. In this particular one, we get the word Azazel mentioned a couple different times, and I just wanted to go over that with you if you like.
I'm going to screen share that, John.
Okay.
But you go ahead and read it.
So here in Enoch 69, verses 1 through 2, and it says, "After this judgment they shall terrify and make them to tremble, because they have shown this to those who dwell on the earth. And behold, the names of those angels. These are their names. The first of them is Samjaza. The second is Ardakifa. I'm probably butchering these names, but whatever. The third is Armin. The fourth is Kokobel. The fifth is Torael. The sixth is Rumjal. The seventh is Danjal. The eighth is Nekael. And the ninth is Barakel. The 10th is Azazel. The 11th is Armoros. The 12th is Batarjal. And the 13th is Busesajal. The 14th is Hananel. The 15th is Turel. The 16th is Simi. I guess this is a tough one right here. Simap Esiel. And the 17th is Jetriel. The 18th is Tumael. The 19th is Turel. The 20th is Rumael. And the 21st is Azazel. And these are the chiefs of their angels and their names, and the chiefs over hundreds and fifties and tens.
Sean, that's a daunting task to read those like that. So kudos to you, brother.
Man, so we're getting all these names because remember the whole premise of the enemies in the book of Enoch that show up as these rebellious angels, 200 in all, they show up, and they had leaders of the 200s, these are the names of the leaders we're getting right here. The reason I showed this, Kim, because in the original text that's translated in the book of Enoch, the 10th name, that Azazel there, that doesn't have little translator marks around it in the original text, but the 21st name Azazel does, if I'm not mistaken.
Good catch, because I was actually going to ask you this. Could it just be that there's two different angels named the same name, or what's going on here? Because it would be confusing. But
what those little marks, if I'm not mistaken, from the actual translation of the R.H. Charles translation of the Book of Enoch, that would suggest that in verse 2, at the end of verse 2, which says the 21st is Azazel, that particular one has the little marks around the word Azazel, and that when you look up in the index of what those marks mean, it shows that there's a corruption in the text, and the translator just basically had to guess and fill in the rest.
Okay, so it's probably not Azazel.
So it may not be two Azazels. Even if there are two guys named Azazel, we know there's only one that was left unpunished and is still running around. Yeah. But the point is, I just want to draw that out for the viewer in case someone is very detail oriented and they had already been familiarized with Enoch 69, because in this same passage we get two names Terrell that are very similar, and the translator just gave them one letter difference. Or the three names basically. There's Turiel, and then there's also the 15th is Terrell, and the 19th is Terrell.
Yeah, we see the same name. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and those translator marks are around one of those Terrells as well. So again, he's just guessing because the translator has a corrupted text and is trying to figure out what that letter was. So the point is, this is just the concept of Azazel here is being mentioned as one of the chiefs, okay? And this is the whole concept of why all of sin was ascribed to him, and these other guys, he seems to be different, if I could say it like that. He seems to hold a different place because he's addressed differently by the Father than the rest of these rebellious angels. And I think we're actually going to continue reading about that in Enoch 69 and the following verses, if you want to take that one.
Sure. Yeah, and maybe Azazel is just a common angelic name. Who knows? I mean, there seems to be like 10 Marys in the New Testament. So
yeah, well, if there's myriads upon myriads, which someone tried to calculate one time, was saying that there's like trillions of angels above us in heaven, then at some point you may have a duplicate name.
Okay, so guys, we're here in 1 Enoch chapter 69. And it says, "And the third was named Gadrael, and it is who showed the children of men all the blows of death. And he led astray Eve, and showed the weapons of death to the sons of men, the shield and the coat of mail, and the sword for battle, and all the weapons of death to the children of men. And from his hand they have proceeded against those who dwell on the earth from that day and forevermore." So, yeah, I mean, Sean, I think the reason why we decided to go with this passage is pretty obvious, because it talks about the same type of mischievry that he was showing mankind in other Enochian passages. And as well, we have an interesting thing here where it says that he led astray Eve.
Yeah.
That's a very unique little thing to throw into the text, right? I mean, it should bring the reader back into Genesis where we see the serpent, right, and Satan.
Right. So this is where I was going to ask you. We've got a guy named Gadriel, and he's the one being attributed to the deceiver of Eve. But yet he's described as having the same bad behavior as we saw in Enoch chapter 8 described of Azazel.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it, with all the appearances, I would say for sure this is just yet another name for
Yeah.
this Satan character, this adversary, right? I mean, he fits the bill for all the descriptions following. It's just I know what we've had discussions over the past couple of years, Sean, and this definitely threw me off. I mean, all the different names was throwing me off, but the more you read scriptures, the more you see that there are many names for different characters, right?
Yeah.
Different characters that have the same names. It's not uncommon. So, yeah.
Yeah. And this is where I wanted to include the Apocalypse of Abraham as our next couple slides, because it actually, Abraham actually sees this moment as well, as far as the temptation of Eve.
Yeah.
And it actually attributes a specific name to that angel who's in the garden tempting Eve.
Yeah. We'll just go right over to it.
Sure, brother.
Did you want to read it, or do you want me to read it?
Yeah, it's this Apocalypse of Abraham, chapter 23. Is that the one on the screen?
You got it.
Okay, cool. It says, now look again in the picture and see who it is that seduced Eve. And what is this fruit of the tree? And you will know what is. Oh, I'm sorry. For the viewer, I just need to back up a minute, Ken. For the viewer, I just want you guys to know we're reading now the Apocalypse of Abraham. Abraham is being shown a vision by an angel right now. He's actually, in this vision, he's been taken to the seventh firmament in heaven, and he's actually looking down at some different concepts throughout history. And so in this particular part, he's actually getting to see what happened in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve. So it says, now look again in this picture and see who it is who seduced Eve, and what is the fruit of the tree. And you will know what is to be, and how it shall be with your seed among the people at the end of the days of the age. And all that you cannot understand, I will make known to you, for you are well pleasing in my sight. And I will tell you of those things which are kept in my heart. And I looked into the picture, and my eyes ran to the side of the Garden of Eden. And I saw there a man of imposing height and mighty in stature, incomparable in aspect. And he was embracing a woman who likewise approximated to the aspect of his size and stature. And they were standing under the tree of the Garden of Eden. And the fruit of this tree was like a bunch of grapes of the vine. And standing behind the tree was one who had the aspect of a serpent, having hands and feet like those of a man, and wings on his shoulders, 6 pairs of wings, so that there were 6 wings on the right and 6 wings on the left. And as I continued looking, I saw the man and the woman eating the fruit of the tree. And I said, who are these who are embracing? And who is the one between them who is behind the tree? And what is the fruit that they are eating? And he said, this is the counsel of the world. This one is Adam. And this one, who is their desire upon the earth, is Eve. But he who is between them represents ungodliness and their beginnings on the way to perdition. He even is Azazel. So we get this specific guy is absolutely immediately called Azazel, this angel that's in the garden.
Yeah, there's no obscurity here. We get the name, and it goes right back to the previous text that we read about the same angel who had a different name, but was the one that was the tempter of Eve who led her astray. Yeah, it pairs well, in my opinion.
Point, if we're tying all this context together, right, of these same scenes that are happening from these different books. And by the way, if you guys haven't studied the Apocalypse of Abraham, I mean, it's just it lines up so much with the canon. It's just as strong as Enoch, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a pretty freaky book. I mean, we keep saying this. We understand why a book like this would get removed. Like, if you have
Ken, you're still screen sharing, brother. Okay, sorry about that.
I keep the screen share on, Sean, because last time I kept prematurely taking it off, so I just figured I'm just gonna leave it on until Sean tells me to take it off this time. But
well, I don't want them to be deprived of your face, brother.
Oh well, I took a shower before this broadcast, so I hope it's nice and clean and squeaky. But
yeah, man,
I just think that there's definitely nefarious reasons out there, in my opinion, to remove books like this, because we see this information that really helps understand for our understanding of the backstory, and it definitely builds our faith and our hope. And Yeah, for those who may want to know kind of more about the book itself, Sean and I are actually going through this particular book right now on Honor of Kings. The last episode or two, and a couple more episodes going forward, we're covering many chapters of this book. So if you're interested, check out those episodes, because there's just so much in there that is exciting.
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff in there, and Azazel is like all throughout that book. Abram, and how he was trying to tempt Abraham, and like it's crazy, man. And what the angel talks about. In fact, that's our next passage. Would you like to read this next one here?
Yep, sure.
Okay.
All right. So we're still in the same book, guys, just chapter 13. And it says, "And I did everything according to the command of the angel, and gave the angels who had come to us the divided animals. But the angel Joel took the birds, and I waited until the evening sacrifice. And there flew an unclean bird down upon the carcasses, and I drove it away. And the unclean bird spoke to me and said, Abraham, what are you doing upon these holy heights, where no man eats or drinks, nor is there upon them the food of man? But these heavenly beings consume everything with fire, and will burn you up. Forsake the man who is with you and flee, for if you ascend into the heights, they will make an end of you. And it came to pass, when I saw the bird speak, I said to the angel, What is this, my lord? And he said, This is ungodliness. This is Azazel. And he said to it, Disgrace upon you, Azazel. For Abraham's lot is in heaven, but yours is upon the earth. Because you have chosen and loved this for the dwelling place of your uncleanness. Therefore the eternal mighty Lord made you to be a dweller upon the earth. And through you every evil spirit of lies, and through you wrath and trials for the generations of ungodly men. For God, the eternal mighty one, has not permitted that the bodies of the righteous should be in your hand, in order that thereby the life of the righteous and the destruction of the unclean may be assured. Hear this, my friend, and be gone with shame for me. For it has not been given to you to play the tempter in regard to all the righteous. Depart from this man. You cannot lead him astray. He is an enemy to you, and to those who follow you and love what you desire. For behold, the vesture which in heaven was formerly yours has been set aside for him, and the mortality which was his has been transferred to you." Very cool little interaction there, Sean, we have going on between two angels. One that's, disguised as a bird, which is another interesting characteristic about angels, specifically watcher angels, who can manifest in many different forms. And
Right.
I know I've already said this before, guys. We kind of have gone over this particular chapter on Honor of Kings, and there's a lot of meat in this verse, or in this chapter rather, that is, very eye-opening as to the angels and what they can do and how they can manifest to mankind.
So what's interesting, I totally agree with what you're saying, bro. And to add to that, I just want to point out, I think I can't see which verse it is, 9 or 10, but it just says, this is ungodliness. This is Azazel. And he said, disgrace upon you, Azazel, for Abraham's lot is in heaven, but yours is upon the earth, because you have chosen and loved this for the dwelling place of your uncleanness. Therefore, the eternal mighty Lord made you to be a dweller upon the earth, and through you every evil spirit of lies, and through you wrath and trials for the generation of ungodly men. So this is just reiterating what we just talked about in Enoch chapter 10, and also Jubilees chapter 10, right? Where even though he was sentenced in the days before the flood, he wasn't actually taken and put in that sentencing in the hole in the ground yet, because he's still out. And it was saying his dwelling was made to be on the earth, because his actions showed that he loved the earth more than heaven because of his corruptness, his ungodliness, and evil spirits. And it says, through you, every evil spirit of lies, and through you, wrath and trials for the generation of men. That was the purpose of the Nephilim, his hosts who were subjected to him in the book of Jubilees. And so it's just very interesting. So it doesn't say here that, it doesn't even mention that you're going to, that it says he chose, excuse me, I'm trying to find my words to summarize everything we've been going through for the viewer, and do it quickly. But the angel is rebuking Azazel, but he's not telling him, hey, your lot that you've been given is the pit or is Sheol. It says, no, the eternal mighty one made you to be a dweller upon the earth. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
And that's the directional language matters in the scriptures, guys. This absolutely matters. And this is why in the book of Job 1 and 2, when God does see Satan coming before him, and he says, "Where you been?" He says, "Oh, to and fro in the earth." Right? And
Yeah.
Peter tells us Satan's like a roaring lion, prowling around who might devour. And this is why we see in the book of Revelation, we see this Satan character. He's interacting on the earth.
Yeah.
And so this is like, he's actually, again, this kind of goes back to, people have a hard time with this because we're so indoctrinated by television and movies, and that we're trying to get a mental image on what does this even look like? What does this guy look like? Because we've already tried to state a case for his tangibility, his physicality of reality. Like, this isn't a wispy Casper ghost. This is a tangible, this is an entity that eats and drinks.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if he sleeps, but this is a character that is somewhere on the earth. He's not in heaven. He's not under the earth. He's somewhere on the earth, and he's running around doing stuff. And he's got minions that do his work with him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he's
And so
roaming
this
around
is
like a roaring lion, seeking whom he can
that's
devour. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so this is a very tangible thing, and this isn't to strike fear into anybody's hearts, right? Why? Greater is he that's in us than he that's in the world, right? We know that we have the Spirit of God in us, but this is why we see this guy actually emerge in the end of days, leading up to the return of the Messiah.
Yeah.
And he actually presents himself to the people in some regard, because it says they wondered after the dragon in Revelation 13, and then he goes and gives all his authority to the Antichrist, to the beast, to whom they also wonder after.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, poor Abraham, Sean. He had to deal with Satan several times,
yeah,
In this particular passage, obviously, we see him showing up as a bird. If we look at the book of Jasher, rather, there's evil birds kind of earlier on in his life that he has to, deal with, and he sees Satan once again trying to thwart his instruction from the Father to go and essentially sacrifice Isaac on the mountain, and Satan is trying to do everything he can within his power and his physicality to thwart that from happening. He can somehow, become like a flood of waters. And he tries to do that in that passage. And it's crazy how many times Satan, messes with Abraham, and Abraham just comes out the other end just awesome.
Yeah, he definitely overcame. And so this next part here is also still in the Apocalypse of Abraham. This is chapter 14, but we wanted to it's further mentions of what's going on with Azazel right now. And so we're trying to build you this idea of what this guy's doing, what he's capable of, and the interactions of how those who live in heaven above, the Father and his angels, how they view this rebellious angel Azazel. And so here in Apocalypse of Abraham, chapter 14, verses 1 through 14, it says, "The angel said to me, know that from henceforth the Eternal One has chosen you." And by the way, this is talking to Abraham. I know we're kind of skipping some parts here, but this is immediately talking to Abraham. It says, "Know that from henceforth the Eternal One has chosen you. Be of good courage and use this authority so far as I bid you against him who slanders the truth. Should I not be able to put him to shame who has scattered over the earth the secrets of heaven and has rebelled against the Mighty One? Say to him, become the burning coal of the furnace of the earth. Go, Azazel, into the inaccessible parts of the earth, for your heritage is to be over those who are with you, the ones brought forth with the stars and clouds, and with the men whose portion you are, even those who exist on account of your being. Justification shall be your enemy. Now depart from me by your perdition." And I uttered the words that the angel taught me. And then the angel said to me, "Answer him not, for God has given him power over those who answer him." And the angel spoke to me again, saying, "However much he speaks to you, answer him not, in order that he may not have no free access to you, because the Eternal One has given him weight and will in this respect. And I did that which was commanded me by the angel, and no matter how much he spoke to me, I answered him nothing whatsoever."
Yeah.
Yeah, this is fascinating, because this just reminds me of Eve in the garden, right? The moment she started speaking to him, he got her.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. He had an alluring sense of, appeal, I guess. Like, it's just.
Well, Genesis says that he was more crafty than any other animal in the garden,
More
right?
subtle
More
than any
subtle.
other. Yeah. It's.
So that would make a lot of sense. I mean, this is where we get the cliche phrase of a serpent tongue. But that would make a lot more sense if we're getting this concept here that he's been given the weight and will in this respect, right? For those who answer him, he's been given power over them, or free access to them in some regard. So basically, the guy's a master word player, right? He can just don't even talk to the dude because he's going to get you somehow.
Yeah.
He's already 10 steps ahead of you in the conversation. So don't even talk to him. Just ignore him, resist the devil, and he will flee. You know what I mean? So it's like, clearly, it's to me, this is amplifying this description of him being subtle and clever and crafty.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
which
I mean,
we got.
we
ahead,
see that in the last chapter, right, Sean, where we see him really trying to scare Abraham about this experience that he's about to have by going up to the Father, right? And you're gonna die on your way up. Come on, like you don't belong up there, and really trying to instill this fear, right? Trying to use this logic of you're a man, you can't go above the firmament, you're gonna die, right? Like don't believe these guys that are here with you. They're the ones that are gonna trick you, right? So he's just trying to always like subtly instill the fear or change the script a little bit, which we've theorized that that's what he is. He's the ultimate lawyer, right?
Yes. The bad one, yeah. He's serpent tongued, and devil tongued is definitely appropriate there. But now let's actually look at some of that interaction real quick as he tries to tempt Jesus, because we see some of that type of behavior right here in Matthew chapter 4.
All right, Sean, I'll read that one. I got it here.
Okay.
Matthew 4, 1-11 says, Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And after he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he then became hungry. And the tempter came and said to him, If you are the Son of God, command that these stones become bread. But he answered and said, It is written, Man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. Then the devil took him into the holy city, and had him stand on the pinnacle of the temple, and said to him, If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down. For it is written, He will command His angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. Jesus said to him, On the other hand, it is written, You shall not put the Lord your God to the test. Again the devil took him to a very high mountain, and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, All these things I will give you, if you just fall down and worship me. Then Jesus said to him, Go, Satan, for it is written, You shall worship the Lord your God and serve him only. Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and began to minister to him.
Man,
what
I love
a crazy, I know. The more you understand who this Azazel character is, I mean, you read this interaction and you're just like, man, the gall, right? Knowing that this is the Son of God.
Yeah.
And you're going to try to do what you've done to, the patriarchs before him and, get him to completely step out of line of his Father's will. Wow.
Yeah. This is him trying to be crafty, right? Trying to pose false questions. And what I love about that, and which is why I paired this with what we just read in Apocalypse of Abraham, where this angel is trying to explain to Abraham just how crafty Satan is. Here in this interaction with Yahshua, he tells him, he's like, look, throw yourself off this building. Remember, the angels are commanded concerning you that you won't strike your foot against a stone. He's quoting from Psalm 91. Well, here's where the craftiness comes in. In case the viewer is not aware, Psalm 91 is all about the day of the Lord.
Yeah.
It's a prophecy about the return of Christ and how the angels protecting him as he comes back.
Yeah.
And he's ruling over, he's taking care of the enemy. He's doing his thing. And we can line that up with Isaiah 63 as well. Whereas the Messiah is talking about he's doing battle and there's no man with him, right? Because there's angels with him. There's no one of mankind with him. So there's so the concept here is that Satan is misquoting. He's quoting out of context Psalm 91 and twisting that as an immediate application. And Jesus doesn't take the bait because he knows Scripture.
Yeah, exactly. And furthermore, Sean, we have here another role that we're presented with for what verse was it? So verse 1, we see here that he's tempted by the devil, so that's another name, another title for this adversary, right? And then he's also referred to as the tempter in verse 3. So he's a tempter, right? So we got Satan, who's Azazel, who's Mastema, who's Gadriel, who's the devil, who's Beliar, who's the tempter, who's this roaring lion. You know what I mean? So we're getting more and more familiar with the fact that this guy embodies a lot of titles, a lot of roles.
That's right. And it's Jesus in verse 10 calls him Satan. Says, go, Satan. Now, of course, when he shows up in Revelation 13 and the whole world is following after him? Do you think they're going to call him Satan?
No.
Of course not, right? They're going to be deceived and calling him whatever name he chooses at that time, right?
Yeah.
So that's where, actually, that's why I chose the next passage in our next slide, is because he is the one that deceives the whole world. And here's that Revelation 12 passage that actually talks about it. It's actually going to have a mention of something you referenced earlier from Jasher, about some of the ability of what Satan
Right.
can do to deceive people.
All right. Go for it, brother.
Yeah, Revelation 12, verses 7 through 17. There was a war in heaven, Michael and his angels waging war with the dragon. The dragon and his angels waged war, and they were not strong enough, and there was no longer a place found for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, the serpent of old, who is called the devil and the Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, "Now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of God and the authority of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brethren has been thrown down, he who accuses them before our God day and night. And they overcame him because of the blood of the Lamb and because of the word of their testimony. They did not love their life even when faced with death. For this reason, rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. Woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has come down to you, having great wrath, knowing that he has only a short time. And when the dragon saw that he was thrown down to the earth, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child. But the two wings of the great eagle were given to the woman so that she could fly into the wilderness to her place, where she was nourished for a time and times and half a time from the presence of the serpent. And the serpent poured water like a river out of his mouth after the woman, so that he might cause her to be swept away with the flood. But the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and drank up the river which the dragon poured out of its mouth. So the dragon was enraged with the woman and went off to make war with the rest of her children, who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus.
Yeah, wow. A lot going on here, man. This is, if I'm going to be real transparent, this is a very enigmatic chapter for me.
Yeah, me too, brother.
Yeah, definitely more studying involved with this one, but we have some interesting things, like you said, taking place here.
Yeah.
And we got another name here. He's a dragon, the great dragon.
That's right.
Serpent of old.
Yep. And he can pour water out of his mouth, just like we saw in the book of Jasher.
Right.
We also get this concept of him attacking those who keep the commandments of God. That would have been Abraham and everyone else, right?
Yeah.
And we also have this concept of Michael is warring with him. So we also saw that in Enoch 54.
Yeah.
So that we just got a lot of correlation here with what's happening. Now, this, of course, is an end time event. And this is, I theorize personally, and I'm not holding to this as my final conclusion, because this, like I just acknowledged with you, Ken, this is a very interesting chapter that needs a lot of study. And I'm not at a place where I'm putting on a full presentation of this particular chapter yet. But my personal theory at this point is that this interaction of this war, things that are taking place here, is very close to the day of the Lord. And so specifically, it kicks off the 42 months, where we see Apollyon reigning, and this angel that comes down and releases the key to the pit. And Apollyon shows up with these other 200 million things, whom I strongly can show from Scripture is the actual Antichrist character we see from Revelation 17.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on here.
I would agree. I would agree with you with verse 14 there, where it talks about the times and half a time. That's that 3.5 year kind of 42-month period where, we see Apollyon's reign on the earth when he is released from the pit, and it seems to be in that timeline. So I would agree, Sean. It's very close to the day of the Lord, which would be directly after that 3.5 years comes to an end.
Yeah, that's a little contextual time qualifier, that little phrase, time and half time, as we see, Revelation 13, and Daniel also talks like that. So, like I said, I'm not really at a place to put in a full-on presentation, but more than anything, just the names, the references within this particular passage, and what Satan, his intent, his goals, what's going on, how he's in enmity against the good angels in heaven and the Father. It's just, I know many people are already kind of familiar with this concept, but we're helping them see what's leading up to this moment and all these other passages that we've been talking about.
That's right. All right, we got a couple more slides here, guys, and then I think we'll wrap up.
Yeah, Ken, do you want to take the next one?
Yeah, for sure. So we're in Satan's prejudgment mentions here. Or in Revelation 20:1-3, which says, "Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, holding the key of the abyss and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold of the dragon, the serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. And he threw him into the abyss, and shut it, and sealed it over him, so that he would not deceive the nations any longer until the 1,000 years were completed. After these things, he must be released for a short time." Oh, sorry, Sean. I think you're on mute there, brother. Oh, Sean, are you there? I think we just lost Sean, unfortunately, guys. I'm not sure if I'm still live or not. Okay.
Hey, Ken. Sorry, brother. I'm back. All right. Yeah, I went to grab a drink of water and I tripped and fell, but I didn't spill anything.
Oh, are you okay?
Yeah.
I thought I got disconnected or something there. Just okay. You didn't spill on your computer or anything? None of that nonsense?
No. I basically just fell in the hallway, but because I was
Okay.
trying to hurry and jump over the dog gate, but I didn't spill the water.
Okay, good.
So it was a success. But
Yeah. So we were we were just in Revelation 20, verse 1-3 there, and we had read that already at the beginning, but this is just kind of reiterating this idea of the angel coming down from heaven who holds the key of the abyss and then has that great chain in his hand, and he grabs the dragon, the serpent of old, the devil, bans him for 1,000 years. And that's what we were talking about in Enoch earlier, where where it was mentioned as forever. This is actually 1,000 years, and he's placed in the abyss. In verse 3, it says he throws him into the abyss, and the abyss is another name, in my opinion, for Sheol. And Sheol, as the greater apartment, or as the greater whole, has different compartments within it. And so this abyss, in my opinion, is this wilderness in Dudael, whatever that is. I think this is kind of the same idea that we see in Enoch. So
yeah, absolutely. I agree, brother. This is
the day of the Lord, right? We're right back to the day of the Lord here.
Yeah, so this is where we've kind of come back to the introduction of this concept here. This is him actually receiving that sentencing that was pronounced to him way before the flood. So his end has been known from long before, and he's called the perdition, right? He's called destruction. This is why the Antichrist is called the son of perdition. Because he's theologically following in the ways of the serpent, of Satan, and he actually, to the point where he shares his authority when he shows up in Revelation 13 and is trying to rule the world and deceiving the world with the serpent. And so there's that duality that they're standing in, and basically the Antichrist is standing in the agency of Satan.
Yeah.
So if you have heard us talking about this concept of agency on previous episodes, even the enemy uses that concept, right?
That's right.
So it's like, it's this idea that this guy is now, we've determined who this dragon is, who this serpent is, who Satan is, and the different names he goes by, where he came from. He was originally created as a holy angel in the Watcher class, and they came down the earth. He rebelled amongst mankind by teaching them very destructive behaviors between men and women. And from what we can conclude, he was actually the guy that's tempted Eve in the garden, which tells me, Ken, that this guy was at it for much longer than these other rebellious angels that came down in the days of Jared.
Yeah, he started rather early, it seems. It's hard to exactly say, because I know in Jubilees it talks about Adam and Eve were actually in paradise in the garden for, I think it was around 7 years before sin entered, before he decided to do this, right? So
yeah, that's right.
I don't know what the environment would have been like during those 7 years. I mean, from other extra biblical books, it seems to refer or mention at least that he had a hate on for Adam and Eve right from the beginning, right when they were created. So he could have been working up this this angst towards them over a period of time, which could have been about around 7 years before he decided, all right, now I'm fully doing something. But yeah, you're right. We see him kind of implementing this mischievry as the first one within the garden, and before these other 200 watcher angels decided to rebel and take women and become defiled and all that. So
yeah, and that's it seems like well, first of all, Jubilee says that he showed up on the anniversary of the 7th year, and so, or I guess the end of the anniversary of the 8th year, I think. So it was 7 full years they were in, and he started to try to tempt them. But this concept is clearly he has a heart that can choose unrighteousness. So this just lends more to the point of these angels. They're real entities, guys. Yeah. They showed up with Abraham and had a meal with him. They waited around all day for Sarah to cook the meal. They interacted. They slept in Lot's house as guests, right? Jacob wrestled with one of them. Guys, these are real entities. These are tangible. You can grab these things. Yeah. And I mean, you can hug them and hold on to them, and right. And apparently they can have babies, right? So because they're males, and they were created at creation like that. So the point of what I'm getting at is, clearly they have different abilities than regular humans, than regular mankind, but they very much have real touchable bodies in some degree. And so it would only make sense that a big chain would have to be brought out to wrap them up.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry about that, man. I was just gonna say, like, it's interesting because growing up, I was taught that when God created the heavens and the earth, he essentially created Satan as this adversary. Yeah. He created Satan as, you're going to be the adversary, and that's it. That's your role. And it's sad because, as you've just said, angels were created with free will. That's right. They have the ability to obey and disobey, right? To obey the eternal law, which was right from the foundations of the earth, or to disobey it. And he didn't just randomly choose, out of a host of myriads, be like, all right, you're going to be the bad guy for this storyline that I'm placing everybody within. He's given everybody, including his angelic entities, the ability to obey him or not to obey him, right? And we see that consistently throughout the scriptures with these angels as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you're describing is a very Calvinistic idea that has been adopted from Gnosticism. Is this idea of that at the beginning there was, the good and the bad, and both were created together. It's like this duality. It's basically the concept of yin and yang. And that's what I think. Because it's a concept we do not agree with, that we do not feel Scripture teaches. And I think, even if I'm not mistaken, isn't that what Jehovah's Witnesses teach, that Jesus and Satan were created like his brothers, and one was good and one's bad? Or is that what?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I just know that they think that Yahshua is Michael in the Old Testament.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, that's clearly easily debunked. But that's where we have a wealth of scriptures trying to help us understand, that this Satan character is clearly, he's in the storyline the whole time, but he has a different crescendo. He has a different ending than some of these other things. And for whatever reason, brother, I just trust God, that God knows. Okay. And that's where I have to just say, look, I put this in your hands, Father. If it was up to me, there wouldn't be a Satan, right? But I'm not God, and I'm not trying to say he's making a bad decision, because he clearly could have already put this dude in the lake of fire long ago. Okay. Yeah. And even when he comes back, his Messiah doesn't put him in the lake of fire. In fact, angels take him and throw him into his original punishment that was pronounced. And even when he's let out later, why is he even let out? What I'm saying is, it's interesting that the Father has chosen to allow this guy to be around. And to me, it would make sense if you need humans to exhibit free will for obedience.
Yeah.
And this is, to me, why he has to be let out at the end of these 1,000 years, because you had 1,000 years of him being locked away, all the demons being gone. The city of God, the New Jerusalem, has come down to the ground. Messiah's inside of it reigning. We're resurrected saints. We're inside of it reigning with him. The water of life's flowing from the garden to re-heal all the earth, the waterways of all the earth and the land. You've got free medicine from the trees of life growing inside the Garden of Eden, which is the New Jerusalem. And the cities, the survivors of the day of the Lord can camp around this thing, as these so many passages tell us, and they're actually getting food and water and medicine from the city, and they're learning the ways of the Father. They're learning the Torah, so they don't have a tempter. They don't have these unclean spirits trying to oppress them and create sickness and disease. And they've got a really, I mean, they've survived the day of the Lord, so that means many of them experienced loss on that day.
Yeah.
But at the same time, for those future generations, brother, I gotta say, they got a cozy little setup.
They do, and I think I know where you're going with that. Is that this is why Satan gets released? Is that there has to be a final? Okay, I've given you, like you said, a cozy little setup throughout this millennial reign here. Now let's see, like, are you truly going to, side with me and do you truly desire to be within the walls of where my first resurrection immortals are, or are you going to be easily persuaded by this Satan character that I'm going to release for a time to do that in the earth and then eventually throw him into the lake of fire, right? So yeah, I agree, man, that ultimately the whole point of us in this earth realm, in my opinion, is that this is a tryout. We're trying out, and the Father's trying to see who wants to live with me forever. I'll give you my ways. I'll give you all this stuff. There's got to be some form of temptation. There's got to be some sort of like opposition here to test you, to see, are you really willing to be with me or not? Like, what are you going to do, right? And
That's right.
Even these people that you said, these survivors of the day of the Lord that inhabit the millennial reign era, are going to need that as well. Only to keep things fair, right?
Yeah, they absolutely knew, and this is what apparently in the days of Noah, as we read in Jubilees 10, it was too much. Right. So there was an unequal scale, if you will. There was too many unclean spirits tempting too few humans that had survived the flood, and
that's when all 10/10ths were there, right?
Yeah.
The whole lot of them were there, not even 1/10 that we see in the earth right now. So
yeah. So he was asking for reprieve. He's like, man, we need some help. There's too many of these dudes. Yeah. So, but yeah, so then that changed. And then now mankind is outpopulated, if you will, the remnant of unclean spirits. But even at the day of the Lord, there's going to be a lot of survivors from the nations. I don't know how many. I can't give you an exact number, but all the demons are gone. So now the scale is tipped to the other way, where now there's a lot less tempters and there's more humans that can learn righteousness and walk in love, which is why they won't be warring with each other anymore. And they're being taught the ways of Torah, which means they're not going to be engaging in vanity and fornication. Right.
That's right.
So this is actually what we're going to read in our last passage here. This is actually Satan's location during the millennial reign, and it's reinforced by the book of Jubilees. Ken, do you want me to do this one, or do you want to do it, brother?
Go ahead, brother. Yeah, I got it pulled up here.
Okay, cool. And Jubilees 50, verses 1-5, and it says, "After this law I made known to you the days of the Sabbaths in the deserts of Sinai, which is between Elim and Sinai. And I told you of the Sabbaths of the land on Mount Sinai. And I told you of the Jubilee years and the Sabbath of years. But the year thereof have I not told you till you enter the land which you are to possess." By the way, folks, this is an angel talking to Moses. So the whole narration of the book of Jubilees are angels on Mount Sinai talking to Moses while he's receiving the law. So it's a really fascinating book. And 3, "And the land also shall keep its Sabbaths while they dwell upon it, and they shall know the Jubilee year. Wherefore I have ordained for you the year weeks and the years and the Jubilees. There are 49 Jubilees from the days of Adam until this day. And 1 week and 2 years, there are yet 40 years to come for learning the commandments of the Lord, until they pass over into the land of Canaan, crossing the Jordan to the west. And the Jubilees shall pass by until Israel is cleansed from all guilt of fornication and uncleanness and pollution and sin and error, and dwells with confidence in all the land. There shall be no more Satan or any evil one, and the land shall be clean from that time forevermore."
Wow, what an amazing time that's going to be.
Yeah. So he doesn't tell them how many Jubilees until that moment, but he just says the Jubilees will pass by.
Yeah, it's too bad, Sean? It's like,
I know, right?
He gives us the number up to that point where he's having the narration there, but then it's like, then there's going to be many Jubilees to pass by. It's like, come on, give us the exact number. Why don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, and Jubilee is a span of 7 weeks of years, which is 49 to 50 years. Yeah. So this is this concept of the angel's trying to give him a timeline of like, this is where we got up until this day. That's why the previous 49 chapters of the book of Jubilees is basically the angel telling him the history of from creation up to Mount Sinai, right? And then he's like, and then after this, there's a lot of time will pass until the millennial reign, basically, which is exactly what he described. Everything he described in there, if you understand the millennial reign, the day of the Lord, he's describing this moment where we read in Revelation 20, Satan's locked away. There's peace on earth. So
I guess we can kind of do the math in a way, right? If this is, if you know, the little brackets here where it says 2450, that's what, roughly 3,550 years or something like that from that time to the kickstarting of the millennial reign. If this is, you know what I mean?
well, that I actually need to go check the math on those brackets because that's inserted by the translators.
Yeah.
And I had someone bring up on my channel that math is wrong. And so I need to personally check it and see what's going on there. Because, you know, as we've dug into the book of Enoch and other places, we see inserted things from the translators.
Yeah.
And those brackets are a denotion that it's inserted by the translator. Yeah. So I hear what you're saying, and I agree that it could be fun to try to figure out, but I don't know if I just can't speak for that translator's insertion right now.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. But yeah, man, this is essentially, to me, this is like it's a foundational understanding. It's a foundational concept, this idea of Satan and who he was, where he came from. I'm so glad you brought up that point, brother, because that's what I heard from many different sources throughout my life as well, that Satan was created at creation to be evil. And he's always been like that. And you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And he's living in hell with a pitchfork, right? And you're just like, dude, none of that is in the scriptures. He was created as a holy angel, but he rebelled. He has a choice. So he basically stopped abiding by the ways of Yahweh. He transgressed the covenant, the eternal covenant that they keep in heaven, by the way. And that's something we see fleshed out in so great detail in the book of Jubilees, that the angels themselves follow the law of God in heaven, and they have since creation, except for that 200 of them that rebelled. So, and I've said this before in our Honor and King show, Ken, but think about this for a minute, man. So we got myriads and myriads of angels, even if it's not trillions, just say it's billions or hundreds of millions, and only 200 of them went wayward.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that some people theorize that there's more that rebelled. I've just never seen it explained in any text. You know, if I see that somewhere fleshed out and it, you know, and it seems to be legit, then I might reconsider. But as far as I can tell from everything I've read and all the canon of 66 and all these apocryphal books, there's only 200 angels that rebelled out of hundreds of millions. So to me, it's like that's a very, very small percentage and minority of bad guys. So the Father's way, you know, the Father's got a great kingdom, man. Yeah. You know, and I just think that's fascinating to me, that such a small number of what do they call that? Your attrition rate? What's the business term for that? Where you lose customers over time? I can't think. Someone in the audience probably knows what I'm talking about, but yeah, the Father has not lost. Like, his loyalty rate is super, super high. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And amongst that kind of percentages, and we unfortunately have to deal with this craziness, you know, because of just that small number of rebellion, and then they're trying to create that behavior of rebellion amongst mankind.
Yeah.
You know, exactly. And it just reminds me of what Jesus said when he said, a little yeast leavens the whole dough. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Because a little bit of sin creeps in and it infects so many people throughout the ages, and it's heartbreaking. But this is why the Father continually gave us his word, gave us angelic visitation to the patriarchs to explain his word, so that we can then share his word to other people, so people know what righteousness is. They know how to resist the devil, just like we saw Abraham being taught, you know, and they can walk in love and peace and just know. And this is what I love about this, Ken, is I hope to make this show more than anything for the viewer. I hope that they walk away from this and say, look at what the Father has done. He showed us who the bad guy is. He's told us his name by name, and he told us he's going to be judged and taken out of the way, and there is justice done, right? It's coming. It's going to happen. The Father is not ignoring it. It's all a part of the plan. Justice will be done to this dude. And, you know, there will be a day where there's no accuser of the brethren.
Yeah. Amen, brother. It's going to be an amazing day for sure. And in the interim, we are to remain in covenant, right?
That's
to
right.
love him the way he wants to be loved. And because we know that this character that we've been talking about all episode makes war against those who keep the commandments of God. So if we're keeping the commandments of God, you know, we're within his will. We're walking out his will in this life, and we're going to be doing that as immortals at the resurrection. So that would be my, I guess, encouragement to you brothers and sisters, is to continue strong in the faith race, right? Run it until it's completed. And yeah, life is hard. Absolutely. We're going to have trials and tribulations and persecution. Absolutely. This is all the Father's work in our lives to see what we're truly made of and what we want to desire to be made of at the very end, right? When we receive the inheritance and our promise. So,
Amen. Yeah, good words, brother. All right, anything you'd like to say in conclusion beyond that? Otherwise, I'm all done for tonight.
No. Beyond that, I just want to say that, like, hopefully this episode dispelled the notion that God created a character to be evil from the beginning and that he created demons. You know, Sean, I've heard that, like, in the Old Testament, where we see unclean spirits, right? Which is it's just synonymous for what demons are, unclean spirits. Yeah. That he allows, just because he allows an unclean spirit to take over Saul after removing the Holy Spirit from him. Obviously that unclean spirit must have been made from the beginning to do that, right? That's the Father's way of implementing some sort of way to test people, or to, you know, if he rejects certain individuals, he allows them to embody them, right? And I would say, no, that's not true. He didn't create these things. He's a good God. He created everything good from the beginning, everything. And if we're going to take Jubilees chapter 2 seriously, he created all the angels, all the hosts of angels, to be good. They were good, everything. So it's just that this free will, this option of choosing between remaining in covenant and obeying him or disobeying him, that is where we see destruction manifest. And that's the same thing with the angels, same thing with what they did in Genesis 6 and in Enoch and Jubilees, with these rebellious angels creating these offspring that become, you know, these unclean spirits in the earth. The Father did not create those. So just for those who may be wondering or maybe teaching that, he did not.
Yeah. They had a choice like we do. So it's I'm excited that the Father's been so graceful to us to give us his Spirit to choose wisely.
Yeah.
You know, that we subject ourselves to the Spirit of God and therefore to his instructions, his law. And that's that way we can be excited when this day happens that we just read about, all the destruction that's going to happen and the imprisonment of Satan, all the destruction of the beast, the Antichrist, the false prophet, and all the hosts of Azazel, you know, they're extinguished from existence in the lake of fire. We get to rejoice in the idea that we've been given his instructions, his law, his Spirit, and we get to anxiously await the return of the Messiah on the day, Lord, right?
Yeah.
We're getting to enjoy the road to rescue, whereas they look at it as something that they, you know, don't want to happen, right? They want to try to avoid it at all costs, you know, but we get to enjoy this life and this walk with him. So I'm excited about it. And we thank you for joining us here again on episode 13 of the Road to Rescue on the Parable of the Vineyard channel. Now, Ken and I, we actually have our own channels. Mine's the Kingdom in Context channel up here. You're welcome to go on YouTube and find us there. Ken, do you want to plug your channel real quick?
Yeah. Mine also is up on the wall here, right here. Hanging on his words is what it's called. And it's, you know, it doesn't have many videos, but I'm slowly trying to put out videos that have good content and are visually appealing. So it takes time to make these videos. So I appreciate you brothers and sisters if you want to go check that out and subscribe and share and, you know, comment on them and talk with me. I'd love to see what you think. And at the end of the day, I just hope that they edify you and help encourage you and build hope in your life. So
yeah, man. I appreciate you for joining me here to co-host with me, Ken. It's been great.
Yeah, absolutely, brother.
Okay.
You too.
Guys, thanks for joining us here again on the Road to Rescue here in the Parable of the Vineyard. And we'll hope to see you here next week. Have a good night.